Welcome to Goal Getter, the AAP Physiotherapy podcast. My name is Jen Panteluk, and I'm the CEO of the Alberta Association of Physiotherapy. This show explores the power of physiotherapy, helping individuals move, heal, and thrive. Let's get moving. So today we're sharing a story from Northern Alberta, a story about what happens when two physiotherapists in a community come together to build something truly meaningful for people living with Parkinson's. I'm so grateful to have three amazing guests join us today: Salija Pamiti, Rosanna Clark, and Charlene Hevner. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having us, Jen.
So to start us off, can you maybe each share a brief background about what inspired you to work with individuals living with Parkinson's?
Sure, I can go, I guess, first and then work our way across. As a physio, I mean, I'm old. I graduated in 1989, and I have to say, actually, I really hated my neurology rotations as a student. Had no plans to do neurology, but happened to start in like a hospital that did rotations in Saskatoon, and so I was forced to do neurology. It was just kind of came with the job, and I actually found once I got in it, I loved it. So over the years, I started doing more and more, and probably by around I don't know, somewhere in the mid 2000s, I was doing neurology, I was stroke and all that. But then in about 2016, I guess we're going to be Salja, we finally had staffing up here in Grand Prairie at the QE2. It was the QE2 hospital at the time. Now it's the ambulatory care center. We had staffing to actually open up neurology outpatients, and looking around, AHS was really pushing hard. Like, I've been involved with that. I was doing acute stroke work, and they had put a lot of time and effort into that. But we looked around and realized supporting our PD and MS population, it was almost zilch up here. There was nothing really available for them. And so that started Salja and I on the path of, okay, what's best practice? What should we be doing? And actually, that's where we connected probably very first with the PAA, with the Parkinson Association of Alberta, because we both went and did a train the trainer program that they had at the time. And that then led us to getting into things called Parkinson's Wellness Recovery, and going down to Arizona for that and getting our training in there. So yeah, way back, I think it was the realization that there is a huge need. There's a huge population of people that were not getting their needs met. So yeah.
Yeah, so for me, it's the opposite. Neuro has always been my passion,
Mm.
even from school days. And I think having dad had a stroke when he was 50 and working closely with him, and that kind of cemented that passion a little bit more strongly, I would say. There's a personal experience as well. And how much the personality changes they go through, the cognitive changes they go through, and where you're not seeing them as an isolated condition, but as a whole person, that made a lot of difference in how I looked up at neuro perspective, and how that kind of cemented my passion even more to be in that world. Coming down to some of the information that Rosanna shared, yes, 2016, when it didn't start off as PD and MS, to be honest. It started off as a neuro outpatient because that's the biggest gap we kind of realized, where some services are lagging. But before we realized that's the population that knocked on our door, and then realized this is the biggest population we have that needs to be really taken care of, because there are an odd ALS, an odd PLS, an odd this and that other neuro conditions, but the major portion of our neuro turnover had been with PD, and closely followed by MS. So that's where the rest of the journey started for us, is exclusively becoming PDMS. I was a full timer until 2020, so I was still taking up vestibular cases and some of the other complex neuro cases as well. But pretty soon we became more exclusive to PD and MS, because we realized the need for that population was huge, especially across this belt that we are in. So that's how it started for us. But what also made us look into collaborative care for both of us was, even before we started the neuro journey in 2016, we both were part of a medical floor to some extent. We started what is called Meet and Move program for those people waiting for getting admitted into long-term care facilities. Usually they are the first ones we drop when we are short on staff. That's the reality, because they're waiting placement. There's no set goal to look forward to. Acute care always is going to trump everything else and all of that stuff. But when we became kind of semi-staffed, fully staffed, we thought, okay, this population needs to be something needs to be done for them as well, because just looking at four walls, even a able-bodied, cognitively strong person is just going to decline. So we came across with a group program for them, and I think that also paved a way. It gave us a little bit more confidence to say, yeah, we can do this group thing and
Yeah.
this and take it from forward, because with the success of that program actually helped us in actually modeling this program quite a bit as well.
And Charlene, yourself, what brought you into the world of Parkinson's?
I'm the outlier. I am not a physiotherapist. I'm a registered nurse. I am older than Rosanna, so I've been in this field a lot longer. I worked as a registered nurse, and neurology has been a big part of my field. But for 15 years, I worked at the movement disorders program out of the University of Alberta. And that serviced a lot of our movement disorders, Parkinson's being the biggest. But I also volunteered with this organization the whole time because I wanted to know what was out in the community for our folks, what was going to keep them active, what was going to keep them going. And so I have had the fortune I now work for Parkinson Association, but I've had the fortune of knowing these two ladies for many years. And I know that we all have the same goal, and our goal is to keep people as active as possible because the research shows that people with Parkinson's, if they're physically active, they do much better. And so part of my love is of this is my goal is for people to live as well as they can. And that being said, they need to be active, both physically, mentally, socially. And I do feel that the connection that Parkinson Association has with these two wonderful allied health who have literally grown that program, but now we have people that's their life, like they look forward to those days when they spend time with people. And so a passion that they have, but also a passion that I have too. So we're all working for the same goal to make sure that they're doing as well as they can.
I'm excited to dive into the nuts and bolts around the program. But before we do, for listeners who may not be familiar, would one of you be able to maybe talk a little bit about what is Parkinson's and how does it affect day to day movement and function?
Sure,
Then we'll
I'll
get
take
to the
that on. So
oldest.
Parkinson's is a chronic progressive neurological condition where chronic, we know it's not going to go away, progressive because it does change over time, neurological because it involves our brain. People lacking dopamine, which is a neurochemical needed for smooth muscle movement, is the biggest challenge because movement comes in all forms and all muscles are affected. So, not just our physical muscles, but we think of our voice as a muscle, our bowel as a muscle, our brain as a muscle, all of those muscles. And so, the challenge comes in that when you're lacking dopamine, you're also lacking things like motivation. Apathy becomes a huge part of it, that get up and go. People are stiffer, they're slower. And so medication does help with some of that, but we do encourage them to be active physically, mentally, and socially so that they can continue to do as well as they can on that journey. Parkinson's, the challenge is every person is different. So even though we might have 20 people in a room with Parkinson's, the only thing that's the same is that diagnosis. How they progress through their Parkinson's is very individual. And so meeting people where they're at and trying to keep them as active as our goal. We know that they're going to change over time. We know that Parkinson's progresses, and often the balance becomes a big challenge. Parkinson's wants people to do things small. We want them to move big. And so their posture becomes a challenge. Getting to the bathroom, getting to the bed, all of those things, getting in and out of a car. And so movement is such a big part of your life, and Parkinson's affects that. And so movement becomes more difficult as Parkinson's progresses. Now, that being said, some people say, oh, I have a tremor, so I have Parkinson's. The key thing is not everyone with Parkinson's has a tremor, and not everyone with a tremor has Parkinson's. And it's not just old people. There are people that are diagnosed as young as 20 and people that are diagnosed in their 90s. Kind of the average age is around 60, but we have younger and older folks. And so it's a complex, now they're calling it not necessarily a disease, but a syndrome. It's very, very complex. And
Hmm.
the challenge comes in that there's no algorithm, there's not one thing that works for everybody. And so it is a challenge.
I think a lot of it too is all those non-motor symptoms that kick in there. That everybody kind of thinks tremor, but there's just so much more to it all.
Yeah, and I think the challenge lies in the fact there is no set diagnostic tool for it. Like unlike any other neurological condition, there's no set diagnostic tool like, okay, the MRI shows this, then this is Parkinson's. This shows on the blood work, this is Parkinson. There's no diagnostic tool. Your diagnosis is purely based upon your symptomatic presentation, and clubbing them together with non-motor symptoms, not just plain, as Charlene said, all tremors are not Parkinson's. But people tend to wait to think about Parkinson's until they see a tremor, which is unfortunate.
Or you also get ones that we've had a client that was not referred to neurology because their family doctor said they didn't have a tremor.
Yes. And that is the
So that's the
other
other
issue,
odd
is that
thing.
our biggest risk factor for Parkinson's is aging. And so
Mm.
we say all of a sudden there's more people. Well, our population is aging. But you guys are exactly right. Those non motor symptoms are the things that often drive people to the doctor versus the physical symptoms. So think of an iceberg, and the things above the iceberg are what you see: the stiffness, the slowness, the tremor, the postural changes. But the things below the surface, things like apathy, memory, constipation, sleep problems, sexual dysfunction, all of those sorts of things that sometimes don't get talked about. But those can sometimes be the factors that take people to a doctor. And that might be what is part of the diagnosing. You're exactly right, Selja, in that there is no specific test. I mean, we send people for MRIs and we send them for blood work to rule out other things, because
Mhm.
other things can cause symptoms very similar to Parkinson's. And so it's really hard, because some people say, how can you prove to me that this is what I have? Well, the only way we can for sure is to take a part of your brain out. Well, we can't do that when you're living. So our neurologists and our doctors do the best on their medical examination and your symptoms. And then if there is a response to medication, there's a higher likelihood that that is the diagnosis. And so it's hard, because you get people that present with all kinds of things: a frozen shoulder, which after 5 years of, being investigated, oh, maybe you have Parkinson's. Well, we have people who all of a sudden things are just not working the way they were. Well, let's do some investigations. Oh, I think you might have Parkinson's. And so it often takes people years of
Mm.
investigation to get to that specific
Oh yeah.
diagnosis.
Most of them, when you ask them, when we assess them, they've been dealing with things for 3 or 4 years at least that they were aware of.
Yeah.
I think all of you have touched on the importance of movement when it comes to working with individuals with Parkinson. Based on your experience and some of the individuals that you've worked with, what do you find people with Parkinson's often don't know about physiotherapy and its role in managing the condition, or how important it is to keep themselves moving?
I think one of the things we find, I'd say, is we often have had people referred on to us, and a statement we've had frequently is, "What are you going to do any differently?" Unfortunately, I think within the physiotherapy world, and hopefully this is changing. I mean, I can speak for Salge and I. Again, we're older, but when we were taught, Parkinson's was basically hand them a walker, help them not to fall, and that was sort of what you did. Um, and I think there's also, even as Charlene said, it may start with some what seems like orthopedic things, and so they go to an orthopedic clinic and they get treated really in sort of like an orthopedic patient, and you can't. It's, I mean, and so they've gone to a clinic and they had their hip looked at, or they had something done, and I mean, some of them have done the rounds and they feel like they've already been to physio and physio did nothing. And so it's also just explained to them that, it is a specialty area in some ways, and you need to find somebody that understands Parkinson's, and there is a lot that we can do for you to help. And there's a lot of research about, the benefits of exercise. I mean, more and more, one of the ones we've talked about, and Charlene is aware of, is the Sparks trials that have been coming out. And is actually the U of A is one of the sites that is involved in Sparks 3. They're looking at the fact of that exercise itself may be neuroprotective for these guys at certain levels, and things like that. And they're trying to fine tune that in the Sparks trial 3. So there is so much that we can offer them, but they do need to try to find somebody that understands Parkinson's. And unfortunately, a number of them have gone through the rounds of people that don't. So,
And I
yeah.
think there's the other misconception too, because it's a neurodegenerative disease. They think there's no
Mm.
turning back.
Yes.
And there is always this it comes down to what is physio really going to do when it's a neurodegenerative disease. Forget about the physio, any part of allied health, care or movement. The question is going to be like, it's a neurodegenerative disease, there's no turning back, you're not going to cure it. What is it really you're going to do here?
I was just going to say, we had one gentleman come to us being told just to write his will. You've been diagnosed with Parkinson's, and this is it. Life's over.
Yeah,
You
so
know,
when they come with that
yeah.
kind of a setup, a mental attitude, or even a lack of awareness or education as to how much, yes, we can't cure it, but they need to understand we can treat it. They're two different entities. And that's exactly what we are trying to do here, is treating it from where it is to where you want it to be and how much work you are going to put into it. But to get to that point, the belief needs to be there. So that's where our biggest struggle initially was, the buy-in, making them understand, yes, you cannot cure it, but you can treat it, you can delay it. And that's where our movement, our exercise group started. Our focus is delaying the disease.
Yeah.
We're not curing it, we're not reversing it. We can reverse some of the symptoms for sure, but we are delaying the disease process as much as we can, so that you could be a functional individual as long as you can, stay home, enjoy doing things you love as long as you can.
I often say we're trying to push back the tide. The aging tide, the aging cap is happening. We can't, all of us are aging, but we're trying to push that back to a normal aging process as much as we can. Yeah.
So I'd love to learn more about the program. Could you walk us through? You both kind of alluded to where it started and you saw that need. What does the program entail? And can you talk a little bit about everything that you've done? Because it's really been described a bit as a movement.
So as Rosanna already kind of informed, so 2016, we became fully staffed for a change. Otherwise, it's always been musculoskeletal, surgical, always trumps everything else. We got always pulled in there as needed. 2016, we got fully staffed, and our manager called us and said, like, okay, identify the gaps where we can provide better service. And the first thing we identified was the neuro population, because no private clinics take neuro conditions. We had rehabilitation, respiratory rehabilitation in our wing. Everything was happening, but there was nothing I could see in our community for neuro population in particular. So we both came up, and because she's already was in the stroke world, so she knew the needs were there. And I was in rehab. She was doing acute strokes, and I was doing the rehab portion of it. And once they're past the acute phase, they're into the rehab. That's where I was in. So we kind of complemented each other right from get go when I became a fully licensed physio. So we kind of said, okay, this is where we need to look in. These are the gaps we need to fill, and we would like to focus on neuropopulation as much as we can, and medically complex conditions like amputations and other stuff. And I think we started, and within about 2 to 3 months, we got so many referrals through word of mouth, through other colleagues, through other whatever areas. But it came to the point we had to decide how we were going to move forward with this, if we were going to go see every person that knocks on our door, which is impossible, as she was a part-timer then, I was a full-timer. But even for a 1.4 position, to see every client one-on-one and give them the time they need was going to come to a point where it's going to be impossible to manage. So then we had to put our heads together again and say, like, one, we need to know what the latest research is happening, because I said we are old schoolers. We learned Parkinson's is all about maintenance, and we know that's not how we want to roll this. So we want to know what latest research is, evidence-based practices out there, and what we need to learn, and how we need to equip ourselves with better tools to treat this population. Number one, that's where the first thought process was. And the second thought process was, we cannot treat them one-on-one. Then what next? So we looked out and we came across big, which was at that point, at that moment, was the evidence-based practice everybody was talking about, was the big and the loud. Then we went to Train the Trainer program in Edmonton, and then Lisa Roberts introduced us to some of the Parkinson's wellness recovery exercises. That's when we knew about power. And then we looked at the difference between big and power, and we realized power is more flexible to tailor make to an individual. It doesn't have a rigid schedule. There's nothing, I can't say one is better than the other. Their principles are the same, and their targets are the same, but how the approaches are different. Let's put it that way. For me, the approach was different. So again, we spoke to our manager. She blessed us. So we went to Arizona, did our therapist course to begin with, so that we know the kind of outcome measures we need to be aware of and how to even start this program forward. We came back and then we decided we were going to do it as a group program, because a little bit of that came from the Meet and Move program that we initiated with our geriatric population. So, and we knew how effective a group environment could be for individuals, not just because of physical, but social, cognitive, and that emotional support they get from each other and stuff. So then we kind of said, okay, I think we should go the group way. That way we can manage our caseloads better with less waiting period, and we would be able to take more clients as they come in as well. So that's how it all started for us. And our first group was April 2020, 2017.
We had nine Parkinson's clients, and we had an MS tag along because she was the driver for a PD client. And we told her she could do the exercises, but we were not tailoring it to her. And she loved it. And the next thing we knew, she was pushing for an MS group. So yeah, we pretty much from the second group, we've been running to an MS program and the PD. Yeah. So
And people traditionally travel quite extensive distances to start to participate in this program, correct?
we've got people that are coming. I mean, right from the beginning, we have people that are traveling at least, I would say, an hour to come in to see us, if not more at times, depending the summertime. They may be guys that will come down in the summer more often. Um, Now with our Zoom, like again, we kind of process. I'm not sure where their questions, but basically, we kind of start again with all the group work initially, and it's grown and grown. And we have a full schedule of things that are up and running in all different aspects of strength and you know we have a class that is just the power moves, but I mean, power is a base. I mean, we take it and manipulate it and use it as therapists. It's like a tool in our belt, but there's many other things that we use. So we've got a whole program of things that are up and running. But then when COVID hit, in 20, things all of a sudden, I had never even heard of Zoom, didn't know existed. And at that time, I think we had maybe 30 people maybe with us going actively. And then COVID hit, and Salja was unfortunately off on a sick leave. And I all of a sudden learned about Zoom, and we started pulling in people from across the province really into Zoom. We had clients that were way too far away, like your people up Fort Mac and other places that just couldn't connect in. And so they would come down. Like we've had people that drive from Whitecourt to come see us and things like that for their yearly assessments. And we'd kind of help them get going with things, but they couldn't take part. So all of a sudden I was phoning up people that were too far away saying, guess what? We have started on Zoom based, programming. Do you want to join in? The PAA started referring people from across the province to us, and we started pulling in people from across the province. And I agree. I mean, Zoom based is not, I would say, the gold standard. But for those that have absolutely no access to a physio that has training in Parkinson's, they think they've hit gold. And all of a sudden they have somebody that speaks their language. And not only do we speak their language, but they're meeting people on the Zoom programming across the province, that they start to connect with socially. I mean, during the COVID period, I had people that it was their social life. That was the only time they really talked to people, was when they came onto Zoom with me. So we exited Zoom. Salja came back shortly after that, and we then had people that on the Zoom world that were screaming at me that you can't drop us. And then we also had the people coming back in person, and we've really had to then work, and we've basically combined that together where we have programming all week long on various aspects, but we've got a lot of the more distant people now coming in on Zoom, from all. And well, our manager had to pull back a little bit on us, and now it's only North Zone of AHS that we can accept clients from. So we've structured a whole structure about how we pull in non-local clients, as we call them, and versus our what we call local clients.
So you mentioned you have, programming all week long. Could you give us a sense of some of the types of classes that you offer for these individuals?
Yeah, so if I'm going to go day by day, probably it's much more easier. So we do have boxing on Monday. So we have sitting and standing boxing based upon the level they are at. And when you talk about levels, I mean, probably can get to that later. But based on the levels, we tell them, okay, you're more appropriate for sitting boxing or more appropriate for standing boxing. And based on that, and this is a hybrid one because I am physically at Champion Gym, who has been volunteering their time and their space for this program for since 2017. So I'm there in the gym, and there are people who come in person, and then I zoom it out for others as well who are outside Grand Prairie. So it's a hybrid program of combined virtual and in person. And then in the afternoon, we have something called Think and Move. It's much more like movement with cognition exercises thrown in just for to develop the dual tasking to maintain and all that stuff. Tuesday, we have MS and PD programs specific to PD and MS. And then we also have Strength and Stretch program through Zoom. Rosanna runs a fall class that she takes a very little small group of 2 or 3 where we teach them how to fall, how to get up, how to fall in different directions and stuff like that. And at the same time, I have a power moves group, which are basic power moves, where we just stick to the basics, very basics. Typically, we recommend this group for our newcomers because our old timers know when I say power up, they know what I'm talking about. When I say power rock, they know what I'm talking about. But we have the bad habit of taking clients as they come. We assess them and throw them into the group. And we tell them either you swim or you sink. It's now you're in. So we started thinking, no, that's not going to work that way. So we developed a little, very tiny group of power moves where it's just the basics of every position, every movement, and repetitions like in a loop. So most of the newcomers, we tend to recommend them to start doing those group. Then Wednesday we have balance, and
Yeah, I was gonna say Tuesdays we also have our walking groups. That's the other thing we
so
have.
we for last season we started pole walking during summer, and everybody loved it so much, so they wanted it to continue. So Rosanna is having one group in the morning and one in the afternoon, with the rec therapists joining forces with us and bringing their own clients as well for pole walking. Wednesday we have balance, as well as we have a thing called chat, which is cognitive and hand therapy program. Thursday morning, 8 to 12:30, we have just PD groups in person.
Yeah, the Tuesday group for PD in person is a focus on cardio. So that's where we've talked about we do a full half hour work in their cardio systems, and then we often do stretch work with them. Thursdays, on the other hand, it's a lot of a little bit of cardio, but we do agility, dual task work, balance, speech. We actually have a voice section, cognitive dual task work. Yeah. Oh, you do the boost section too. You're doing the hands, face, muscles, hands, eyes. Yeah, it's a mixture.
Yeah. So yeah, Thursdays basically Rosanna and I are only doing in person. So we have the morning PD group, and then afternoon 1 to 2 we have the MS in person group. Again, we have divided that between the two of us. We have most chair based ones with Rosanna, and the high end ones are usually with me, where they go on the treadmill, they do their intensive training, they do their runs and stuff, and then we do a lot of strength work and stuff. Friday, I do the aquatic group. We have again 2 groups now. We started off with a group of 5, and we ended up with a group of 10 people interested. So we had to make it 2 groups. So I do 2 groups in the aquatic in our local pool here, and then we also have Zoom programs just for cardio. So the 9 o'clock is level 1 cardio. 10 o'clock is the equipment. So our therapy aide, Paul, jumps on his rowing machine or treadmill, and the clients will jump on their own equipment, whatever they have at home, and they just dance to his tunes, basically.
And this is a lot. Some of this is too. I mean, you talk about the apathy because they know that Paul's waiting for them, and it pulls them out to do it. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. Unfortunately,
And the
yeah,
11 o'clock, we have the sitting cardio group.
yeah.
So basically, we are targeting cardio, we are targeting the strength and stretching, we're targeting all those little structures of their hands and knees and like eyes and voices and the breathing and all of that stuff. We have the aquatic program for those people who are struggling with balance on land. And we have the boxing because boxing, rock steady boxing, has been a huge thing that has supported in going us through that route. And then boxing, we know it's mentally good for them to be able to strike something, maybe get some frustrations out of their systems. And not only that, it has a huge impact on the truncal mobility because it's cross body a lot of times. It's so those are all the different programs we have through the week, Monday to Friday.
So when they actually are, oops, sorry, like when we finish assessing them, we will let them know you are a level. We have basically 4 levels, and you're such and such a level, and you can take any class from that level sort of down. And we kind of usually will set, like as Sal just said, a new client will kind of say, yeah, we really would love you to take that power one initially. But again, we also are talking with them about what's their goals, what are their things that they want to focus on. If they are posturally really dealing with a lot of stuff, then we'll say, okay, we really probably want to get you into some of the stretching groups. If you have a choice, if we can get them in person, that is our first. Like if they really, really can't come in person, like we even local people, they don't have transport, whatever it is, but we try our hardest to get them in person.
And once they're assessed, do they have access to come as many like, to as many or as few programs as
Yep.
they'd like?
They there's some are every day they're doing something. Totally up to them.
Yeah. There's no
There's a
limitation
few
of the
times we
number of
stepped in should
groups.
have been a bit too much.
Yeah, there are no limitations as the number of groups they could be part of. We have never capped it in size, especially for a Zoom or stuff. And again, as I said, that they can be doing 2 Monday, 2 Tuesday, two groups on Wednesdays. We never capped in it, saying like, if you are able and you are willing, go ahead.
I mean, we are getting with our in-person one, we have to start watching a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have probably what 30 people that come through on our mornings on Thursday, and so it's getting a little bit big, and we'll have to see how we play that out a little bit in the future. So, yeah.
But clearly, it's a need that was unmet in the community, and now this is very meaningful for a number of people if you have that much interest in the groups, coming out
And
every
I mean,
day.
Charlene could probably speak to, like, I sense that we're not just a problem. It's not just a problem up here. I think it's an Alberta problem that there's no access to this level of what they need. So,
Yeah, there is very few physiotherapists that truly understand what movement and exercise and how therapy can be therapeutic for people with Parkinson's, but it's also that ongoing. Like you see a community physio, you might be able to see them 6 times if you're lucky, but that's not ongoing. And people with Parkinson's, very few people will do things on their own. A group setting gives them that little bit of competitive, okay, if they're doing it, I should be able to do it. But it also becomes a community, and we know how
yes.
important that sense of community is. And so, not just in Grand Prairie, we see it in Edmonton, we see it in Calgary, Red Deer, Medicine Hat, Lethbridge, where people do better if they exercise in a group. And so, if we can find a group setting for people to do it that meets their needs. Now, some of what we find in some communities, things are just too much and people can't keep up. So, I mean, these ladies have developed a program where there's different levels. We don't have that in all of our other communities. So, we're very fortunate that at Parkinson Association, if I hear of someone in the Grand Prairie area that hasn't heard of them, oh my gosh, that's the first referral that I make because I know that they need to be hooked up with what's going on in Grand Prairie and area. So,
And is there a fee for participants to come and join the programs?
No, it's all through AHS. So, no, it's all free.
and most other areas in the province, and I can speak on behalf of Parkinson Association, there are programs, but people have to pay for them. And so there are no other AHS programs that we are aware of that run anywhere else in the province other than what these ladies are doing in Grand Prairie.
And I think the reality is we found, I mean, this is an ongoing disease. They're not going to get rid of it. And so it's hard to say to clients that you're going to pay, I don't know, $100 every few weeks or whatever to attend something. It just, they don't. I mean, they tend to be older, they tend to be retired, and some of them have retired early because of the disease. So, yeah, it is. we've had way back when we used to use a facility where we did have to charge a little bit to use it. We've now pulled back right into the QE2, and we had one lady tell us that she had to budget to attend at that point. This was before COVID, and she could only come every other session because they couldn't afford it in her budget. And that was only, I think, was it $100 for or
It
eight
was
weeks or so?
150 for the PDs and $50 for the MSers.
Yeah, the MS Society backed it, the other one. So
So such an important service then for people in the area to be able to come and not only move, but I think everyone has touched on the importance of that social connection when they come into those group settings and I think that motivation and accountability as well. Right? Oh, they're going to
I
be
mean,
waiting.
the disease is a 2-to-1 ratio men to women, more men. And I have to say, most of our men come kicking and screaming in by their wives, um, pulling them in the door. And they come in not really buying into all this yet. And they will often agree grudgingly they're coming. And I think that's one of you said one of the things you had said is its story, but I think one of the things that give us such joy is when we have that moment that Salja and I look at each other and go, "We've got them." Like, sorry, I'm gonna tear up almost because they were so grudgingly, and we were just like, "Oh, they got so much potential, and are we gonna get them on board?" And all of a sudden, like, they're on board. They've seen the benefits, and yeah, sorry. We just had one of these guys this past week who it was the same thing. Like, we actually had his wife. We've had his wife for years because she's MS, and then lo and behold, her husband. She thought he was PD for a long time and wanted us to see him, but nope. So he had to get the final diagnosis before she was able to pull him through the door, and he finally went to go. Like, you could just see the connection starting to happen as he's been meeting with people and other guys, and okay, I don't have to isolate from this because I have it. And also, he just saw his neurologist for the first time after his diagnosis about 2 weeks ago, I think, Salja, and his neurologist could believe the changes in him in the past year. And his comment was, "I guess I better start to take this seriously." So those moments when all of a sudden you're just like, we see it, but when they see it is so neat. Yeah.
Yeah, we are
Uh,
good fishermen, Jen. We just cast the net and we wait patiently.
yeah. We have a lot of fun in our groups. The music's going and it's just, yeah, it is a lot of fun. But it's so good when they see it too. So, yeah.
And I think, as with like there is a lot of stigma around this, like, and we all know that most of our clients fight, especially men, have this that invincible, we are invincible. There's nothing wrong with me, kind of stuff, and then
Yeah.
you throw this diagnosis at them. There's a lot of negative emotions associated with it. One is denial, a lot of frustration going into it. But when they see people who are also going through the same journey, I think they kind of shift that equation from why me to not only me. And that shift needs to happen. And then you can actually see the shift. Me and Rosanna are very good quickly picking up the shift is happening. He's gone. He's ours now.
Got 'em.
So that's where the social connection and the group plays such a pivotal
Mm.
role. More than anything else is the belief that, okay, I can do this. There's others doing coming along in this journey with me. I'm not alone in this, and I can do it as well. That's the shift we always kind of look for, more than anything else, because when that shift happens, we know they're committed, and when they're committed, we know we're gonna see results.
This is sometimes when we have to slow them back a little bit.
Yeah.
You
No,
don't
I
have
hear
to
it
be
all.
in every group every day. Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to dig into the caregiver piece a bit more. You mentioned that sometimes, right, the wives are pulling their husbands in, kicking and screaming, and they know this is going to be something good for him, but they need to buy it in. What does, this program and this experience look like for a caregiver and how are they part of the journey?
I think they're incredibly important. They are the folks that are keeping a lot of our clients out of long-term care facilities, out of, level of care and needs, decreasing home care needs and things like that. So if we don't care for them, it's half the job done, I think. So, For us, they're very important, and I think we always are kind of keeping an eye out on how they're doing. We do what's called the PDQ Care questionnaire when they're assessed, and trying to get a sense, and that gives us a real glimpse of some of what they're dealing with, and sometimes it's surprising. Sometimes we do a PDQ on our client, and they think life's wonderful. And then we look at the PDQ care and we go, we know why your life is wonderful, because your spouse is taking a huge burden. And so that's where we start pulling in things like social work, or rec therapy, and or even just like for just one picture in my mind I had was of a gentleman that when we first had him come in, his wife was just emanating bitterness and anger. I think at the diagnosis of what had with her husband, and the amount that it was demanding from her, unfortunately, for the level that he was at, and what it meant she was losing out on because she couldn't get out to various things that meant a lot to her. And so we were able to start to pull in rec therapy to look at, could this gentleman go to even adult day program for a day to give her a break. We got her involved, got him involved in some rec programming. We got him involved with us, so she was able to drop him off on times and go for her walk, which was really important to her. She was able to drop him off with us for his group and go for coffee with a friend that she needed to. And I think it was, again, just about a month ago, Salad and I had this look at each other as this spouse came in the door. She's a totally different woman. Like, there's a sense, and she's laughing and she's happy, and her husband is going, I mean, he's doing better, but there's still a huge burden. Like, she has to do a fair bit of care. He's a higher level. But we've been able to look at her and think we have to put things in place, or he's going to end up in long-term care. And so now they're doing okay, you know. So that it is really important. Yeah.
And I think when we were having that in-person group before COVID at Eastlink, that's the biggest thing we saw was the spouses drop them off, and then you can see them all exercising together. The wives, the caregivers, or the spouses, or they all go to the pool and they meet at the coffee shop, and then you can hear them sharing stories of how they're managing their lives and how to deal with this, what is making somebody deal with this better than the other. They're kind of sharing ideas, they're kind of de-stressing themselves, and that's what made us think, okay, this is another thing we need to focus on. We can't just keep looking at our clients, but for our clients sake, this is a very important piece of that person.
Yeah, and I think that's also come out in the last couple of years, and I think Charlene's going to help pull it together even better. As there's kind of been a caregiver group on Thursdays, that, because again, that's the day we have like 30 some come in the door, and their spouses are there, and there already has been a bit of about 5 or 6 of them that have kind of clicked, and they're now getting together, and Charlene will be starting to work with them a little bit when she's up, even more so to try to, help with education components for them and things.
So, Charlene, would you like to maybe talk a little bit more about the supports that the Parkinson's Association offers and how the programs might complement the work happening in Grand Prairie?
I'd love to. Where do I start? So, Parkinson Association does, and we can start with support. Support is one of the 4 things that fall out kind of in our pillars, but we do one-on-one support with our clients, one-on-one support with our care partners. We meet with them either in person over Zoom. We run support groups, and we have 44 support groups that we run every month, either in person or Zoom, and we have various populations. So we have people with Parkinson's. We have people that are solo with Parkinson's. Um, we now are starting our care partner support group. We have a support group for those that have advanced therapy. We have support groups for care partners of people with advanced Parkinson's, and the list goes on and on. And our Zoom meetings, we get together monthly. Our in-person meetings, we get together monthly. So as Rosanna said, one of the things we're doing in 2026 is we are starting a care partner group in Grand Prairie on the months that we have someone there to facilitate the actual support group. So the support group will take place on Wednesday, and then the care partners will get together on Thursday morning. And the months that we have someone coming from Parkinson Association, we will facilitate those months. The other times when they get together, as I alluded to the other day, I told them, I want you to continue to support each other. the times when a PAA staff will be there, it will be a little more formalized in that there will be more education delivered specifically for the care partners. So that's one thing that we do. The other thing of the things that we do is we encourage, we have physical programs. We partner with those in Grand Prairie, but here in the Edmonton area, we have physical programs that take place in our building. We have community partners where we have a boxing program. And in other communities, we have boxing in Lethbridge and in Red Deer. And again, those are through community partners. We also, in our active programs, we look at our cognitive. So we run a cognitive programming called Thinking, Memory, and Concentration. This year we're going to divide it into a moderate and a challenging level. So we hope to be able to have people being able to do both of those. It's done over Zoom. It's a 6-week program that we deliver to the people with Parkinson's as well as their care partner. The other programs that we do, we have a voice program. So we do a speech practice every Monday. It's a Zoom program where we work on your voice projection as well as your facial exercises. We do social singing on Fridays because we know singing is fantastic, and we did a research project that proved if you sing regularly, you do better with your swallowing and your speech. And then we have our other social programs where we get together and we socialize. We know how important that is. So 3 times a year, April being Parkinson Awareness Month, July we kick off our barbecue, and then in December we have our winter socials where we bring people together because most people love to share a cup of coffee or tea and some food, and we socialize together. The other pillar of what we do is our what we call community outreach. And so we do presentations in the community for any organization that wants to know more about Parkinson's. We've been to nursing homes, to support or community partners such as the Lions and the Rotary. We go to a lot of our 55 plus clubs. Anyone that wants to know about us, we will do that. We also partner with we're not a medical, but we run medically adjacent. So we work very closely with the Movement Disorders Program in Calgary and in Edmonton so that the information that we're providing is very factual based. And we have a YouTube channel that does all of our programming. And so our Hope Conference, we run once a year where we bring international experts free of charge to people over Zoom to inform them of that. In our program calendar, we have Webinar Wednesdays where we run once every quarter an information session. We have an Ask the Expert where, again, we bring in experts in the field and our clients can ask because sometimes they don't get the opportunity to talk to the expert. We try our best to meet people where they're at. And so our 101 series is basic information. Sometimes it applies to people. Sometimes they just want to know a little bit more. So we have a whole host of basic information things that we offer to people. So our website does have a lot of information on it, but anyone that wants to know about us, we have a toll-free line. And so we tell people to call. I'm one of 6 people in client services, and we all do our best to find what's best for that person. And so I've been very fortunate to work with these ladies. They refer to me, I refer to them, and we make sure that, especially in the Grand Prairie area, those people are aware and are able to be connected.
It's one of the first things we do when we meet with our new clients is, have you connected into the PA? And if not, can we facilitate this?
And so then with their consent, I reach out to them. And if I'm lucky enough to be coming to Grand Prairie, I will, schedule a meeting where we can sit down face to face, or we Zoom and get some information and again, try to find what's best for them. If it's exercise, if it's information, if it's education, we try to provide that. And so we have an information book we give to all of our very first time we meet with clients. And it's some basic information about Parkinson's, but it's an introduction to us and what we hope that they're able to find.
Wonderful. And I love like that referral back and forth and making sure that, those individuals are aware of all the different resources that are available, especially within their community, which I think is so important. I feel like we could dive and go so many different directions and there's so much to talk about, but I'd love to know, like, maybe if each of you could share one of your favorite stories, that really maybe, or like one of those moments. I know Rosanna, you kind of shared a couple, but this is, maybe like a moment where you were like, "This is exactly why this program matters and why this is so important for individuals living with Parkinson's."
Go for it, Salad. I already blethered a few.
I think it's going to be pretty hard to pick one moment because every client, there's so many changes. We see them and they kind of throw at us. But one thing I do remember is it's one of our very first clients, and she was in many ways instrumental for this program to be what it is. She's no more with us, unfortunately, but she is the one who actually started her own support group when she was got diagnosed 35 plus years ago. She was already had Parkinson's for 35 plus years when she came to us. And when she used to go to the support group, they literally used to pick her up off the ground because she gets off the car, she used to fall. They used to carry her into the support groups. And then she heard about us starting outpatient neuro. And then she started coming to us. And within about a couple of months of regularly seeing us, she was very dedicated, she's one of those, I should say, like very focused. She knew what she wanted and she wasn't afraid of working hard for it. So after 2 months, she actually walked completely by herself, got off the car, went into the support group, and nobody could believe it was the same lady they saw 2 months ago where they had to lift her and go. But as we were working, there's one thing that kind of struck to me was when she came up and said, like, "So how are you doing, Linda?" And she's like, "I finally feel I'm myself." That's what kind of struck me. It felt like I feel like I have my identity back. I feel like I'm myself again. And this is what, because I think she has been a pioneer in so many ways. Right from childhood, she was always a leader, basically. And for her to lose that ability to move, to lead, it was such a huge blow. And that's what struck me when I was talking to her, and that made us kind of even more focusing. If this is what we're doing for people by running this program, we should be doing more and we should be giving more. But that's what struck me. It's like you gave my identity back for me, and I feel more like myself, my old self.
Very powerful.
Yeah. So there are so many moments. Even today morning, I was talking to one of my clients in the aquatic program. All of a sudden, it's like, I can sleep better. I could only sleep 2 hours, and that too in sitting. He spent $4,000 on that chair because all he could do was sit and sleep for 2 hours, and he could not lay down flat. Now he goes to bed at 9:30. He wakes up at 6:30 in the morning. A solid 7 to 8 hours sleep he gets without having to move and without having to suffer through the whole night. And he says that's all because of you people. And then we can, okay, we're doing something that's changing their lives.
And even the Zoom based ones, we don't get to see them as much. They're usually assessed by their local client, their local physios and stuff. But when you get the emails and the conversations with them and you hear, how significantly, I just think of one we have in Cold Lake. And she has been so good at telling us just how impactful this has been on her life. Yeah, that's what makes it worth doing.
You can
And
see the look of terror when we say, okay, it's a summer, we're going to be breaking for 2 months. And they all are like, no, you can't take a summer
No.
break. It's 2 months. What are we supposed to do without you people? We're going to just not move enough. So there's all of that little things kind of add up. And we look at each other. We would like to do this 24/7, 365 days a week. But maybe there won't be any Rosanna and Silaja left after the first year because we're going to just die.
Yeah,
But
our
this
I
is
brains are a
what
bit
keeps us
fried at
going
times.
back.
Yeah.
I also think too, it's when you have someone who has that doubt of, oh, I don't think I can do that. I've never been an exerciser. Exercise is not something I want to do. And so I always say to them, don't think of it as exercise. Think of it as something that's going to keep you, standing up, or something that's going to allow you to do that functional movement of a sit to stand. So let's just give it a good college try. Like, just try it. And if you try it, I said you have to do an honest try. So that's like 2 weeks minimum. And after that point, if you don't feel that you've at least gained something from it, okay, then maybe it's not for you. I have not yet have anyone come back to me and say, "Oh no, I can't do this. This is not for me." But I think for me, because I have a lot of people who are like, "No, exercise is not for me." if I can show them that they can do it themselves. And I mean, we had our social here today, and I had people coming to me saying, "It's all because of you. You made me do that." And I said, "No, I didn't make you do anything. I provided you with the opportunity. You made it happen." But I mean, as these ladies can attest to, we know that if they take that time to do it, they will do better. And so I can think of lots of stories where we, and sometimes you have to almost, I don't want to say threaten, but sometimes you have to show
Be
them that
forceful.
forceful. That's a good one. But sometimes they just don't believe in themselves because Parkinson's is not the best thing. And sometimes they don't have that self confidence. And so, if we can instill that in them, that this may help you walk better, this may help you stand taller, that may seem trivial. But when they see it over time, when they look in the mirror and they actually are standing taller, or they feel a little better, that makes a huge difference. And so, it's those little things that for us are big victories. And so, we want to share that with them.
Yeah, and I had one client. He was one of my very first clients, and he's very special to me. Everybody are, but he's extra special. He just came up to the gym. As soon as he came, the first thing he said was, "I made breakfast for Betty today," and I'm like, "Oh." And then Betty, his wife, walks by and says, "Yeah, I usually have to drag him a few months ago, drag him out of the bed, literally have to help him out of the bed. But this morning he surprised me with breakfast in bed." And I'm like, there it is. So those are all the stories that we kind of listen here and there, and we get to little bit, but it always goes back to that. That's the reason.
So wonderful and such meaningful work that you are all doing in the community. Uh, As we close out, I just love that this is a program and it's so accessible for those in the Grand Prairie community and also those that are able to participate by Zoom. Do you have, maybe one piece of advice to give to other communities or maybe even a clinic that maybe is interested in building something within their community and something similar for a program?
I think the first thing it would be they need to have the interest for it to see the rewards, all right? But the rewards are huge, whether it's personal rewards, professional rewards, satisfaction you get out of this, and what the way you change their lives has is very, very, very rewarding. And if the purpose for us being physiotherapists is that, nothing is going to serve it more than the programs like this. Um, Whether small or big, I always say there's nothing like you don't need to have a big team, a lot of resources for any program to start. I feel it's a willing heart and the time.
I think and then we've talked about knowing what who you're working with. Like it's yeah, you got to know Parkinson's.
Yeah, so investing that time, and even if it is a small rural community, there are so many resources that are still available there that you can tap into. Like you have libraries that run programs, they have volunteers. There's so many things you can still tap into, start small, and then see the gains of it. But just even worrying about starting is where my always I kind of think about, no, you shouldn't. You need to start it to know how much meaningful it is and how much rewarding it is in so many ways. So whether it is small or big does not matter. You got to start somewhere. And then to start somewhere, the interest is number one. And then equipping yourself with the right kind of information, the right kind of tools. And that's the secondary one. And then looking into the local resources that's available for you to tap into, it's a possibility.
I was going to say we make a lot of use too of our AHS volunteers. We have our college students that come there in kin. So again, we couldn't do what we do without our volunteers. They are our spotters for so many of our clients. So look around to who they've got that can be. And I think the reality is it does need to be an ongoing programming for these guys. As best as you can make it. And we've been blessed with two managers up here that have bought in thoroughly. Like, as our first manager is now a volunteer with us. She's retired physio. She retired and started as a volunteer with us because she said I couldn't believe the changes. She saw the clients come in for their initial assessments, and then she said I'd see them go past my office a few weeks later going, is that the same person? And she wanted to be part of that. And so, yeah, she's now one of our active volunteers as our boss, our ex-boss.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
But I think too, you have to have a passion for what you're doing. And I think Sal just said it. If you don't understand or you don't know what you're doing, it makes it very hard. These two ladies are super passionate about what they do. And I think that's what makes it easier. And it's not a job, you're helping people live their life, but we're giving them tools. And so there's lots of communities that could potentially benefit, but you have to have someone that's passionate and wants to do it.
And then Jen, again, I think being in AHS, we are both blessed because I can't see myself doing this in a private setup, honestly, because it is time taking. They need time, and we need to put in the time to get the results that we are expecting. And so that's a blessing being in the public sector. It's a blessing because it gave us the freedom to explore the options, and we were able to tap into the resources that is available through the system, whether it is volunteer resources through AHS or ability to get students, and all of that stuff is possible. So I don't know if we will be able to scale it to this level if we were outside on our own, unless we really had a lot of money and did our own neurogym. But it's a possibility for us to explore to this extent, because I think it is because where we are at.
Well, thank you all so much for sharing your passion and really your commitment to build something so powerful for people living with Parkinson's. This has been such a heartwarming conversation today, and I want to thank you so much for coming and sharing with us.
No, thank you for having
Thank
us.
you for having us.
It was so wonderful to hear about what's happening up in Northern Alberta for the Parkinson's community. If you're interested in learning more about physiotherapy or to find a physiotherapist near you, visit albertaphysio.com. See you next time.